confirmation of the agenda, and the Council of the Township of North Huron accept the agenda for February 5th, 2018 council meeting as amended. To move one item, 13.1, to the open session under 6.4. We have a mover. Deputy Reed Campbell, Councillor Knott. All in favor? Carried. Okay, disclosure of pecuniary interest, if any. None noted. Moving to the consent agenda, the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby adopts consent items 4.11 to 4.13, and further that all other consent items be received for information unless somebody wants to pull an item out. Is there any items to be pulled out?
4.3.1.
I just have a question or like a comment about 4.3.4 that I think it has to do with budget. So I always want to make sure that just a comment there on that.
Go ahead with that before the motion.
So the comment was the letter was received from David Wall with regards to some discussion at budget regarding the RV dumping station as well as the rental for the town hall theater. I'm wondering if I know there was some preliminary discussions about that, the budget discussion. I have a feeling that there's not going to be something firm on that on Thursday. I'm assuming. I think that was only preliminary, but I just want to clarify that through you to Pat, maybe that there isn't really going to be anything brought forth with regards to the RV dumping potentially, or anything to do with the facility with regards to addressing it or anything like that.
Yeah, the RV dumping would be my pal over here, Sean, and no, nothing at this point has been decided. It's something that we can definitely take a look at going forward. But we haven't got anything for.
But nothing would be firmed in for 2018 at all.
Nope.
Okay.
Not at this time. Anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, move, or did you have another?
I have another takeout.
Okay.
4.3.1 is a very well written letter to the editor, which has some very incorrect information that I think needs to be drawn attention to because the letter was widely read. The letter suggests that council has abrogated its responsibility in budgeting and has turned it over to the senior staff. And of course, that's not the case. It suggests that the budget has already been set with an increase of over 14%. That's not true. And the fact that council are just rubber stamping that is also incorrect. It's only natural that we use the intelligence and the experience and the expertise of our department heads and other staff to provide information and background on projects that are going on, things that would need to be done. Council makes the decision. So the decision has not been made on the budget. We're a long way from that. And that's the way it works every year. So it's very misleading information in this. I think it's unfortunate, but I'm sure some people would think that that's the way things are actually done.
Okay. Right.
Note 4.3.3.
Go ahead.
The letter from the Bank of Commerce. So this letter, we came to you then, the closure
yes.
of it. So we've got the opportunity to send a letter reply to them as to whether they would reconsider the closure of the bank.
We haven't discussed that. The letter that came to me described what the bank said was already their plan of action, and that how that they believed in giving at least 6 months' notice, where possible. They wanted it up towards 9 months' notice where they were closing a branch. I'm not sure exactly. I have talked to some of the ratepayers in Blythe that like to be able to make deposits there and that kind of stuff. I'm not sure whether something could be worked out so that they could still make deposits, and the truck that picks up deposits from and brings them to Wingham. That I don't see why it still couldn't work in some form or other, but that's not my decision to make, and that I think it's better if some of the customers of the bank try and talk and give us some information of what they would like to see. The status quo is probably not an option.
Again, there are petitions out there now
Yes,
to be signed,
I
so
understand that.
in support of it. From what I understand is there isn't going to be anything left
Pardon,
there. From my understanding, there isn't going to be anything left there.
that is the way it stands right now. Whether there could still be something of a drop box for deposits in a secure location, I don't know, but
Anyway, I wondered if we should be sending a letter in support of keeping it open.
Councillor Sykes?
I'm wondering if like I don't have an issue with Councillor Hallahan's request, other than the fact we don't know any more information than what
That letter.
that this letter and what's happening. There is a meeting on April the 19th. I think it would be very important that a representative of this council have somebody there to understand what the impact and what the mitigation standpoint is from a CIBC perspective for the people who are going to be affected. And then based on that, I think we come back from a meeting after that and then respond to that with some type of request or support from something. I think it's too early. I don't think we know enough information about what the impact might be or may not be, other than the fact of what they're telling us via this letter. So I think it'd be important to wait for that meeting.
Councillor
I'd just like to suggest that we start doing something right now, rather than waiting for a meeting much later, decide what our course of action is so that we're ready for that meeting and to try to discover whether there are opportunities for making a bid.
Councillor Sykes?
The issue is that where is it our position to start talking and asking a bank or a corporation to justify their decision? It's their decision. It's their asset. I understand it's affecting town ratepayers, and I understand that, customers. But without us knowing the information that they are asking for or what they're giving to the ratepayers, I think us jumping on this is only going to start a problem, my mind, because we don't know what the decision is going to be. Maybe the ratepayers will make the change and CIBC will change their mind based on what comes out. I don't know, but I think by us doing something in haste, I think we're sending the bad message about making sure we have all the information before we make a decision. That's my opinion. Obviously, other councillors have a different opinion, so that's what I'll leave it at.
Councillor Knott?
I actually believe that the council should produce a letter, and I do agree we cannot be telling private corporations what they can and cannot do on their own, but I think a letter from this council expressing our Or which? What was that, which one you did? Oh, okay, our concerns. And perhaps what we could do is, under the circumstances, there's a lot of development or potential development in Blythe, and although we cannot change their mind if it is so made up, perhaps we should ask that they might take a little step back for a year on this decision, just to see what does develop in Blythe, and that they may change their minds. I think it's a little premature myself of them making this decision at this time, but I'd be in favor of us drafting a letter and just say that we are concerned, we appreciate their service, and that we're sorry to see them go, but we think that it might be advisable under the circumstances with the development coming, that they perhaps would consider deferring their decision for at least a year, see what does develop, and that at that time, if they then still decided they should close that branch, so be it. I think we should send something to them now prior to April 19th, so it can be presented at that meeting.
In talking to the regional manager on the phone, he said that a 29% drop during the past year in customers coming in for counter service was one of the big reasons that it got looked at for changing service level, was what he said, moving service level to other locations, whether there will be any wiggle room in at least having a place where people could drop night bags for deposits to be picked up by the armored truck type of thing, rather than them having to travel, because a number of them have store hours that are the same as banking hours, that it makes it hard for them to comply with. Do we leave it for a little bit and come back to it at the end of the meeting as to what you might want in the letter, if you're thinking of putting a letter together?
That's a good meeting. Discuss it then.
At the end of the meeting.
Well, I'm just going to comment in terms of, you could do 2 letters. There's nothing to say that you're limited to 1. So you could do a first letter that acknowledges receipt of this and expressing your concerns, and indicate that you'll have a representative in attendance at the community information session. And then you may have additional comments after that community information meeting. So I would suggest don't feel that you're limited to 1 letter.
No,
If you so wish.
I definitely think that we should put forward a letter before the April 19th meeting so that it can be presented, or will be on their agenda probably. I'm sure they're going to review their letters at that time. Do something now.
Is that a motion?
Should we make a motion and we'll draft it? Or should we put that till later in?
I didn't take mover or seconder, so that, yes, we can go to that motion at this time.
I'll second the motion.
Do you have that, Richard? Okay. Okay, that sending the letter of concern. Okay, all in favor of that motion? Aaron? Is there any other points that people want to pull from Councilor Knott?
4.2.3, through yourself, Kirk has given us quite a list here of changes to the building code amendments. I just wonder if we could get him to give us just a quick brief, if there's anything within here that would affect us, particularly here in North Huron. amongst some of these touts. And I would also like him to explain to me, if I'm reading this correctly, that they're actually going to force us to upgrade our electrical system in our new house development for having, even though we don't want an electric vehicle, having an electrical vehicle charging station.
Are you prepared, Kirk?
I can attempt to answer those questions. Basically, the first amendment in this package here deals with the Elliott Lake Inquiry, where we look at the Elbow Mall roof collapse. So basically due to deterioration, structural inadequate members, and not the ongoing inspection reports. Those types of structures we will not have to worry about in this area. The Second Amendment speaks to building officials, our authority to actually enter on property now. Before we couldn't do that just with scene construction. We needed to have an application present in front of us. We also needed to have a permit on the property, but now we're allowed to actually enter on the property if we suspect construction taking place, which is a good thing. The next item would be fines and charges in the Building Code Act. These deal with corporations. These are being increased from 100,000 to 500,000 for the case of a first offense. In case of a subsequent offense, the maximum penalty is increased from 200,000 to 1.5 million. Registering of orders, we can actually, if we find a contravention within the Building Code Act, we can actually register an order at the land registry office. We can post the order on site, and we can also provide a copy of the order to the public at the public's request. And we can also put it on the website as well. So there's lots of opportunity for future purchasers of a property to find out whether or not an order has been put on the property. The EV stations, charging stations, that is certainly an interesting topic, and you will see more of that in the building code as we move forward. The EV stations do not apply to an existing residence, even if there is no carport or garage. To comply with the code, you will have to put in a 200 amp panel. So it's going to apply to all new construction. You have to provide the conduit from the panel to the garage. And at this point, we've come to a consensus within the Blue Water chapter that we will accept capping of the conduit, so we don't end up with carbon monoxide cycling back into the house. At least the conduit is roughed in. There'll be a box backs into the wall for future installation of the EV station. Existing residences with a 100 amp service will not be subject to putting that in. However, if you want to, through the means of a 2-car addition to your existing house, that's fine, or a single car. The EV station doesn't necessarily stop at the 2-car addition or single car addition. It also applies to a parking space or a carport. And the other chart there provided to council is just an increase on the fees. So our annual registration to Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and then also any applicants applying for an appeal for a minister's ruling or an application to the Building Material Evaluation Committee.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other points?
Move that we accept the remainder of the.
Okay, and a seconder. Councilor Singh. All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, moving to 5.1, Wingham BIA, Wingham Road Policing. Doug?
Okay. Reed Vincent and North Huron councillors. I am speaking on behalf of the Wingham Business Improvement Area, the BIA, regarding a potential move to OPP policing for the town of Wingham. The consensus of the Wingham BIA Board of Management and membership present at our general meetings is that the Wingham BIA is strongly opposed to replacing the Wingham Police Force with OPP policing. The reasons for opposition to the change are slow response times to calls, especially for the schools and hospital, safety of workers at local eateries during late hours, the surprise relocation of the Bristol Terrace OPP office to Clinton in 2 years, which will result in Wingham no longer having a police detachment in our town, significant lack of available policing during shift changes, and longer wait times and greater costs for police to respond to calls. The anticipated payback does not begin until year 4, at which time the OPP costing formula could adversely change. Current OPP pricing does not include court costs, overtime, or enhancements. That is built into the budgeting, but that is extra. Any increase in the number of calls will result in increased costs being added, something we don't have any control over. A number of other municipalities that have gone to OPP policing are regretting the move. The Wingham BIA Board of Management believes that more research needs to be done with other municipalities that have gone to OPP policing. Switching to OPP policing will cost an additional $970,000 in the first 3 years. The Wingham BIA does not believe it is wise for North Huron Council to rush ahead with the decision at this time.
Doug? Is there any questions from council to Doug right now? Okay, thank you. Gil Garrett and Heather Bola. Whether you want to do it, Gil?
You're an assistant. Yep. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So, the Blythe Festival. We can go ahead directly to the next slide. There we go. So in 2017, some season highlights. So lovely to have a chance to come and talk to you all again this year. So we had over 19,000 people come to see a play in Blythe this year. And of those, we welcomed 1,750 new patrons to the theater this year. So those are new patrons who bought tickets, and assuming that every one of those brought a date, then you're looking at 3,500 people who came to see shows at the theater who had never come to see a show there before, which is pretty incredible. Our online ticket sales continue to increase, which is exciting. And importantly, 66% of the patrons are coming from over 40 kilometers away. So we actually, when we broke it down this year, we discovered that we had someone come to the festival from every province in Canada with the single exception of Prince Edward Island this year. So we have a highly targeted PEI campaign this year. Look at those Hampton Devils at the bottom too. No relation, I swear. Of all the regional theaters across Canada, no theater has been as truthful and as faithful to its core audience as Blythe. This was a really beautiful review that we received this year from Robert Reed. For those of you who are familiar with Robert's work, he has been a theater critic based in Guelph, who's been reviewing plays for over 35 years all over Ontario. And so for him to make such a claim about what we do is hugely gratifying. Additionally, too, as I have pointed out to everyone here on many occasions, what we give back to the community is huge, not only in terms of all of these amazing visitors who come and help to fuel the economy in our part of the world, but also we give back directly to all kinds of different charities, especially by donating tickets. So that number that you've got there of we gave to 206 local charities fundraisers. That's everything from little leagues to church groups, all kinds of things. And that's $14,000. That $14,000 there, that is just what the ticket value is. So assuming that they've been able to put that into a fundraiser and actually get people to bid on it and throw a little bit more at it, it actually is an exponential amount of money coming out of that. As always, we had church suppers, and we had over $18,000 in ticketed church supper events. So everybody in the Legion was part of that too. The Legion Ladies Auxiliary do a fantastic dinner if you've never been. On top of that, what's not represented there actually is this year we were fortunate to have the Lions come, the Blythe Lions come and partner with us, and they did a breakfast on Bonanza weekend. And you know, Blythe Lions flipping pancakes for 2 or 3 hours on a Sunday morning on Bonanza weekend. They made over $3,500 that morning alone. So pretty incredible. Over $50,000 in rent went to the local landlords. We had about 65 artists this year who were there. And we continue to serve on the Blythe EIA board. I'm currently their secretary. That's a little trial by fire. But then we also, I've been serving personally on the tourism task force too, the Tourism Arts and Culture Task Force for Huron County. Also in education. But I will say of that, though I can't reveal very much because they're still continuing to work on what the strategy is going forward, but I can tell you that they are certainly prioritizing the destination of Blythe going forward. So we're really excited about that. We continue to receive significant funds from the Ontario Arts Council and the Canada Council for the Arts. And I can actually reveal tonight, because it's happened since we made these slides, Blythe Festival this year received an 87% increase in our funding from the Canada Council for the Arts, which is enormous. It's a categorical change. We went from receiving about $145,000 a year from the council to now receiving $270,000 a year, which is hugely validating of the work that we do. And just to be clear too, that work comes to Blythe Festival because of how exceptional the work is that we do and our standing coast to coast to coast. So we're enormously proud of that. Also, I did point out too, as everyone in this room was intimately aware and involved, and especially Pat Newsom, the renovation of the hall. I mean, it is an enormous game changer, and we are hugely proud to have played such an enormous role, not only in helping to shape what that renovation will become, but also directly through things like the Memorial Hall seat sale, where we've at this point raised over $102,000 through that, as well as this council will remember when I wrote the Capital Spaces grant as well, where we received another $907,000 through that. So over $1 million right there that went directly into the crown jewel of North Huron. See, I just stuck that in. It's the crown jewel of North Huron. There was a beautiful review also we received this year about our show, The Pigeon King. It said that the Blythe Festival has always been home to collective creations based on local history. Its production of The Pigeon King, based on events discovered in 2007, proved that this tradition is still strong and vital. I know there's lots of folks in this room who got to see The Pigeon King. If you missed it, next slide, it's, oh no, it's 2 slides away. I'll come back to that. Just to remind everyone too, we have a professional art gallery as well that has a season of shows all throughout the summer, including a community show that we keep open for all kinds of artists. Anybody in the community can submit their work. We also have the student show where we get young people, teenagers from high schools all over Huron and Perth. We submit their work and have it shown in our professional gallery, as well as 3 professional shows that follow. We also have our choir and our beautiful young company. So here we are on the orchestra. So back by popular demand, Pigeon King. I will be removing the first 4 inches of my hair in order to reprise my role in the Pigeon King. Somebody laughed because they saw that show. The rest of you didn't yet. You don't know what you're missing. Pigeon King is a really exciting show for us. It's been a huge hit. There was a lot of skepticism going into the season. A lot of people were concerned about how we would portray that story. And it was hugely validating to find out that people were so moved and taken with it. We are going to also be touring this show. So we're right now in the midst of putting together what we hope to be a broad national tour of that play. And stay tuned. There's something that I can't announce tonight, but coming in a few weeks will be really quite a significant achievement that will be the cornerstone of that tour in 2019. Stay tuned. Of the plays that we also have coming up next year, the New Canadian Curling Club. So this is a new play by Mark Crawford, who many of you will remember. He wrote The Birds and the Bees for us. He also wrote Stag and Doe for us. It's had a huge success. So Mark has written this show. It all takes place on a curling rink. There's lots of curling in the show. And essentially, it all takes place in a town that is big enough to have a hospital and a Tim Hortons. And they decide they're going to start an initiative for new Canadians who, there's some Syrian immigrants who have been brought over, refugees. They're trying to integrate them into the community, and they decide they're going to teach a Learn to Curl program. So they started to Learn to Curl, and all the people who sign up, so there's a young Syrian refugee who's been separated from her family. She signs up for the curl, as well do 3 other people who are not Syrian refugees, but who all happen to be new Canadians. And then the night before the first lesson, the woman from Municipal Parks and Rec, who was supposed to teach the Learn to Curl, slips and falls in the ice and breaks her hip, and she can't do it. So they have to ask the racist Zamboni driver to step in, and hilarity ensues. So it's going to be a really great time. It's a really funny show. Based on 2 miniature stories, and there will be lots of live curling on stage. Next up, we have a show called Judith, Memories of a Lady Pig Farmer. This is actually an adaptation of a novel by a woman named Aritha Van Herk, who was a Canadian novelist from out west. This was actually a major 1970s feminist Canadian novel about a young woman who leaves the home farm, goes off to the city to try and make her fortunes, and she has a terrible time. She realizes she wants to go back, and by the time she's ready to return, her parents have passed, and she has to start all over again. But she decides she is going to give it a go, and she goes and buys a dozen pregnant sows and tucks in for the winter, and that's the whole play is about her efforts to break out on her own. 1837, The Farmers' Revolt. This is actually a really interesting play. Not only is it a critical piece of Canadian history, but in terms of Blythe itself, so way back in the day, long before this council, the building in Blythe was all but condemned and was ready to be torn down. And there was a group of actors, all with very long hair and great big beards, who showed up, and they wanted to rehearse a play and write a play. And they asked if they could use the hall. And they were told at the time that nobody was allowed in there. And so they ended up actually signing a waiver that said if the roof fell on their head, they wouldn't sue the township. And they were allowed to go in and get to work. And so they went in there and they wrote 1837, The Farmers' Revolt. And they actually toured that play all over the world, but it has never been professionally produced at the Blythe Festival. So it's quite an extraordinary thing to bring it back. And then finally, we have a show called Wing Night at the Boot. I imagine you've all been to Wing Night at the Boot. We're actually in the midst of collecting stories on this one too. So, you know, if people want to make anonymous phone calls into the theater to share your best stories, we're collecting them now to put the play together. So, moving along. And by the end of the 2018 season, we will have done 133 world premieres, which is pretty incredible. Moving along. So, you are an important cast member in this great Canadian story. So, the ask. So this is our joint marketing strategy, and this is something that Blythe Festival has been involved in with North Huron for some time. So we're asking for $15,000 as part of this joint marketing investment. And the direct benefits, so for starters, there are 3 pages in the brochure that are dedicated to North Huron. We put them together, in the past we put them together with Connie Goodall. And we then print a run of 30,000 of those brochures, 15,000 of which are directly mailed to people who we're hoping to bring to the theater. And then the others are distributed all over Ontario. We also have them in tourist booths and restaurants. On top of that too, there is a half-page ad about North Huron in the Season House program, and 20,000 of those are printed. I would also say, importantly, of those, a lot of those are also kept as keepsakes. Often when people leave the theater, they hold on to those season programs that have all the performers in them, and so the ads that are in there have an additional life long after too. On top of that, we offer the opportunity for North Huron to host staff and citizens in other municipalities. We had an amazing municipal night this year. Actually, on our way into municipal night this year, I had no idea how many municipalities we managed to get. I've forgotten now. I think there were over, what was it, over 15.
Or 30. I think there
Was it 30?
Yeah.
15 or 30. Either 15 or 30.
It was a lot.
It was
It
a
was
lot.
approaching 30.
It was
30,
approaching
yeah,
30. It was
okay.
approaching 30. I know because I walked in and I was going to try to memorize them all to be able to say so. And then I ended up saying, you know, from ACW to Zora, everybody's here. So we have that as well. And then the acknowledgement and all the appropriate media releases, of which there are many. I should also introduce our new Director of Marketing, Heather Boa, who just started at the Blythe Festival in January. Finally, as always, logo placement in all kinds of amazing places, including the lobby signage, but also on our website. We just did an enormous revamp of our website together with RTO4. They helped us do an amazing revamp of that. So if you have the opportunity to go, you should. So there it all is. Less than an hour from Kincardine, an hour from Kitchener, an hour and a half from London, 2.5 hours from Toronto, and a mere 15 minutes, depending how fast you're going down the road from Wingham. So that's the story. Thank you all very, very much for your ongoing support. We truly couldn't do it without you. Thank you for your time. If anyone has some questions, I'm happy to answer them. Mary, a question? I should also point out, though, too, as far as the seat sale goes, there are still seats available to buy. So, Bill Knott, you're trying to avoid eye contact, but I offer this opportunity to you in particular. So if anybody's looking to get a seat, I know Brock Vodden already has his, but there's a great opportunity for the rest of you all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. This will definitely be part of budget discussions later on. Thank you.
Do you want me to minimize this?
Before,
Okay. Okay, moving to 6.1.1. Councilor Knapp?
yeah, I just want to make a comment here that, and appreciate the presentation from the Blythe Festival, but I would like to recommend that they approach the, now that we have our Economic Development Committee, that this presentation should go in front of them so that you can explain to all of the members of that committee, because that is completely municipal wide. So there are people from Wingham, I'm sure that are present on the committee, and new members who aren't aware of some of the things like this ongoing program. And I think that ultimately that's where this should rest in the future, is that you should really be talking to the Economic Development Committee and looking at the ways and explaining to them how this whole thing goes together with the entire municipality and seeking their blessing, if that's the right term to use. But so can you please do that?
Yeah.
And if you need help making that contact. Trevor sits on the committee as well as myself. I'd like to see you in there. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. 1.1.
Okay, so this is a report that I have prepared, and the recommended motion is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the February 5th, 2018 report of the clerk/manager of IT regarding bylaws for consideration for information purposes, and further that Council approves an exception to section 19.1 of the procedural bylaw to allow bylaw number 5, 2018, bylaw number 6, 2018, and bylaw number 7, 2018 to be passed at the February 5th, 2018 council meeting. So a bit of overview on this particular report and the bylaws that I'm referring to. They are more of a procedural annual type bylaws, so nothing out of the ordinary there. The only one that isn't one that is considered annually is the bylaw number 6, I believe it is, for appointing a drainage superintendent. That was an item considered at the January 15th council meeting, and the direction from council was to appoint Kirk Livingston as the CBO for up to a 1-year term. And so with the direction from the last meeting, that one is included here. You'll note in the report that I mentioned the overlap in the services there from Dietrich Engineering and Kirk providing drainage services. And then the last bylaw is, so the other two bylaws, the number 5 is the appointment one, which is done yearly, and the interim tax levies, which is also done yearly as well.
Do I have a mover? Councillor Knott, Councillor Hallahan. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Moving to Finance Department, 6.2.1, Clean Water and Wastewater Agreement Amendment. Donna?
Yeah, so we received, all recipients receiving funding under the Clean Water and Wastewater Agreement received an amending agreement, which the bylaw will be brought forward at next meeting. And it's simply stating that the original bylaw was had a completion date of March 31st of 2018. We had requested an amendment to July of 18, but now they've done a wide sweeping amendment where all recipients will now have up until 2020 to complete their project. So next meeting, the bylaw will come forward to complete that amendment, and it has to be back into the ministry by February 28th. Are there any questions?
Councillor Sutton?
I'm wondering at that same time, could we get an update about when, like the progress of that that master plan and just see where we're at, as opposed to how obviously we wanted the extension, I'm assuming based on the government's larger extension we're happy with, but I wouldn't mind getting an update about when that plan we think is going to be finished.
Okay. Mover for that. Councillor Sutton, Councillor Wadden, all in favor? Carried. Moving to 6.2.2, Section 357 refunds. And Donna, do you want to take that?
Okay, so under section 357 of the Municipal Act, and these applicants have applied for and received a demolition permit. So they're applying to have those amount of taxes removed from their property tax bill to reflect the demolition of the buildings. So as I said, the demolition permits were issued by our building department, and we have 2 properties in question. The total amount, as they were under the farm tax class, the total amount is $292.38. And if the applicants are present, I'm not familiar with these folks. There was McElhargy Millwrighting, And the other applicant was, Donald Francis and Marion Jean Hallahan. So are any of those applicants present here this evening?
No.
Okay, seeing not, then we'll carry forward with the rest of the report. So in the township budget, we budget annually for such write-offs or refund of taxes. And so we have included $26,000 in our 2018 draft budget to address this type of application. And as I said, we are required under section 357.5 to hold a public meeting on or before September 30th. And so the holding of this meeting constitutes the requirements under the Act. Are there any questions?
Okay, do I have a mover? Councillor Syed, Councillor Knott, all in favor? Carried. Okay, moving to 6.3.1, the Richard W. Levan Airport Feasibility Study from Huron County. Pat, do you want to take that?
Sure. So the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby receive the report and authorize staff to attend further meetings of the Goderich and then with Goderich, North Huron, the county representatives to discuss recommendations present in the report, and that council provide direction to staff by prioritizing the recommendations from the report. So I know many of you attended the session on January 15th of the Economic Development Board for Huron County, where they presented the report, the consultants. And I guess there's 5 recommendations that we've extracted and summarized here in this report, and are looking for council's direction here on which of these are top priority for us to begin looking at. There's action items involved with each one of them that would require additional work, and we're just looking for feedback right away from council on what your priorities are based on the outcomes of this report.
Councillor Syed.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Pat, through you. Morris Turnberry has a say in some of the stuff in here because it sits in Morris Turnberry, correct?
Yes, the airport is located in Morris Turnberry.
So my question is why wouldn't Morris Turnberry be at the table here? Like, I guess that's a question that I've always had when we talk about this, is because we could talk about a lot of things, but if they're not willing to support movement on bylaws or whatever the case may be, then really we're stuck. And we've had that in the past. So I'm wondering, is there a discussion about bringing them to the table? And if there is, when would that be?
Right, so through the intake process, Morris Turnberry and ACW, because the Goderich Airport is located in ACW, were at the table through some of the discussions in the focus groups that were with just the stakeholders. As well, the consultants met over the phone with Morris Turnberry. And so they are aware of the one request, which is with respect to hangar development and development at the airport, in requesting that the tax revenues, future tax revenues, not what's currently collected from there, but future ones, be redirected back into development at the airport. It hasn't gone to their council because this report is brand new, but they have been aware that this is something that they may be asked. And I'm not sure if Dwayne wants to comment, but my understanding is that it wasn't a closed door at the discussions initially. So that's where that's at. But it would be up to us to negotiate that specifically with Morris Turnberry, and also possibly with the assistance of Huron County Economic Development when we go to this meeting.
Councillor Knott.
Oh, I think Councillor Hallahan was ahead of me.
You. Okay, Councillor Hallahan. Go ahead.
It don't matter. Yeah, of course, the one that I was looking for is for the staff to go with is that I have been all along. I've noticed this was to sell off agricultural, look into that for the 226 acres, or at least get the value of what it's worth.
Okay, Councillor Knott.
If you want me to prioritize these, Pat, number one is going to be, and I'm gonna bet you know what I'm gonna say, and that's gonna be implement landing fees, because I've been pushing for that for quite some time, so, and that's pretty easy to do. I shouldn't say that, that's not necessarily true, but that's one of the things that we can do rather quickly. The other 4 items, growing the RC Jets event rally, I think is a good thing. That's pretty much a tourism-based thing. It's already got a group. We've already done it for a few years. You can move forward on that. And at the same time, I think that would go hand in hand with what you did with Economic Development Committee and yourself through the parks, and is looking at the tourism fly-in packages. That one's going to take a little bit of time to develop, but might have some possibilities with some of the other groups and with the Goddard Airport. With selling off the agricultural land and the hangars, I think go both to the bottom of the list, because until we really make some final determinations of where this airport's going to go, I don't really see us pursuing that, because they're going to involve an awful lot, including Morris Turnberry. So I think they would really go to the bottom of the heap, but I think very quickly you can do the first 3 or begin to process the first 3, and I think that perhaps that would be a project to get together with the tourism committee or the economic development committee to discuss. I really don't. I think selling off the land, I think is something that I don't think is really, when we look at it from a financial aspect, we've talked about it before, and it really doesn't make any sense. Because we do have rental contracts on the land, and they provide a reasonable income, which is probably in excess of what we would receive in taxes on the property. And unless we have some specific use for the money, I think we should just hold off, because it will increase in value over time.
Deputy Reeve.
I was just going to put a note of caution on number 2 of the selling off the land. The capital gain is something that we will really have to look into here, as far as what we'll have to pay tax on if we should sell this property. It's not, you don't pay capital gain. Well, yes, we do. On farmland, you pay capital gain.
You don't. You as a farmer, but not as a municipality.
I really want to check that one out. Because,
Councillor Howland.
Back to it again, agricultural land selling it, I think should go to the top. The reason being is it really doesn't have anything to do with the airport. In the fact that, sure, it's subsidized, but that tenant cannot own that land for the amount of rent that we get on it. Cannot own it for that. The other thing was I don't know whether it was ever discussed as to whether to sell the airport when it's severed off from the other property. If someone wanted to buy it, like, has anybody ever approached a tenant that who might be interested in buying it, like the helicopter tenant, take it over?
Councillor Sutton.
So the discussion about a year ago, there was discussion at this table about that, about selling it off or having a discussion about who would take it over. At that time, we had a meeting here with the tenants of the airport at the time, and their argument was it was better to have it within than it was. Nobody was willing to take aboard that discussion. Did we put it out for tender? No, we did not. But the conversation was there essentially somebody within the airport committee or group that was willing to take on that operation of that? And at that point, in that meeting, there was no discussion, at least from them, that says they would be willing to take it. And that's why at that time we left it as is, because of the concern of that the operation right now. That was a year ago.
Maybe it's brought forward again.
Well, everything could keep coming back. The question really becomes is that, from my perspective is, I really can't honestly tell you what priority I can give these until I know what the position of Morris Turnberry is at. Like that really to me is the caveat that I really don't know. And I'm only hearing from meetings and stuff that they've come to, but until I have a face-to-face discussion, this council is a face-to-face discussion with that council, it says, are we going to work together to make this land and this asset to the county a suitable asset and viable for the whole county? Then to me, I can maybe decide what priority I want to put on these. But right now, I could put my priority as land, is hangar development, but they may not be wanting that. So I guess to me, it's getting the information from Morris Turnberry and figuring out where we're at as a collective group. Because that to me that's the only way we can. It's no different than the development on North Street and that around that. We had to do that together. Let's figure out this together as well and develop that plan together. I think that's the most important part of this report.
Councillor Vaughn.
I was very encouraged by this report. Some great ideas came out that some of which I hadn't thought of, and maybe all of them I hadn't thought of, but some very, very good ideas. And it was encouraging to know that this is perhaps a better asset than I thought it was. If we were to sell it to someone, then we have no control. We don't know if it's going to be developed in a way that will develop our economy. It will be according to the owner's purposes. We won't have any control over that. So I think for the time being, it doesn't make sense to sell that asset at all.
Is there anything more from council? I would invite Deputy Reeve to take the chair, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you. I found this report one of the biggest disappointments that I've had in a report from a so-called professional firm. The agricultural information that is in it is grade 9 or below in abilities. The idea that we sell it off and put it in a debenture for under 3% for up to 20 years is ludicrous. We had a good report done, is that 3 or 4 years ago, about a possible aerodrome when Buttonville was starting to shut down.
An aerodrome. It is, sorry.
Well, a place where there's housing at an airport.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah, hangar homes. Yeah, sorry, yes.
That was, I believe, a very well done report. I'm sorry. This report, I don't think is worth the paper it was written on. It did not take any aspect that this is in a rural area. I believe the concept was there isn't a population density close enough to it to support an airport alone. So that is why they were talking about stripping it down. To me, when that airport was established, the people that established it bought enough land and enough forest that it could very sizably subsidize the operations to make it worthwhile for a small community. So that I am strongly opposed to many of the parts of this report that Admittedly, it aroused temper. I did not throw it, but I felt like it lots of times. And I think we have to respect when something is given to us to help make something that can be a benefit to us. I think it's disrespectful to think about throwing it away. Thank you. Okay. There's a certain number of feelings on it. I don't think we have consensus, Pat. It's something that we will still have to work on, I think. Is council in agreement that it's something to work on? But this report, I don't think gives us anything to work with. Councillor Syke.
You know, to be quite honest with you, Reeve, I hear your comments, and from what the recommendation is, I'm okay with the two, let's receive the report, because we got the report.
Yeah.
I'm okay with staff attending future meetings. I think Morris Turnberry needs to be at that table in discussion. And then let's just defer the whole part of direction on the staff as regards to the recommendations until further notice, until we understand the other positions. That to me is, I think, is fair. At least then we can, they've given a little bit of direction about where we see ourselves going, and get more information. But other than that, I don't think prioritizing those recommendations at this point is valid. So I would make that motion to accept the two and defer the third, if that is what council chooses, so council. So the first two of receiving the report and giving authorization for staff to attend future meetings. My only part of that future meetings would be to make sure that Morris Turnberry is invited to the table. That would be my only, and it's not me to decide that, but I think they need to be. And then defer the last one where it says provide direction to staff regards to the recommendations.
Councillor Knott.
I'm going to agree with you about some of your comments about the writing of the report. I'm going to leave it at that. But and I'm going to agree with Councillor Syke that we should have staff attend and some of the others on council attend further meetings to see what comes forth in conjunction with Goddard and so on. But I'm going to disagree on the third point because, quite frankly, I think those three items that I brought up, we can implement the landing fees, and we can help promote the RC Jet Rally, and also look into and investigate if there are any opportunities for the tourism aspect as presented. So, and they're not really going to cost us any money. In fact, if we implement some landing fees, will maybe generate a little bit more income to help and see how that works out, because we can always rescind that as well. What I'd like to see is actually take some action on those. I guess number 5 was that, which was implementing landing fees, as well as the RC Jet Rally, and bring them into the picture and ask them where we can help them. But definitely, I think the staff need to go forward and attend the meetings with Goddard and Huron County. As far as Morris Turnberry coming into the situation where I see that, I mean, simply as far as building those buildings, that is where we have to rely upon them for building permits and standards. And then the question of the taxation. I very much doubt that Morris Turnberry is going to give us the taxes back towards the airport. So that's kind of a moot point as far as I'm concerned. And the building permits, well, that all goes back to the building code anyway. So we've been through that already 2 years ago when we discussed that in relation to structures and so on. we need to have the discussions with Huron County and Goddard Airport and where they see it going, if there is going to be any possibilities for the future to make these worthwhile endeavors. And until that time, there's really not much point, I don't see, in bringing Morris Turnberry or anybody else into it, because it is our airport, we own it, it's our land, it's our decision. But I'd like to see us move forward on number 3.
Councilor Ritzman Dominga.
From the report, you can see that the Goddard report is in a lot worse condition than ours is, so that already puts us ahead quite a bit. And I agree with you, Neil. I think that the report was very disappointing as to what we could possibly do, but there is some tourist things that we could capitalize on for sure, so I think we should continue to pursue those.
Okay. I will. Trevor suggested what he was willing to do for a motion. How do we feel? Is there a seconder for Trevor's motion at this time or not?
Did Trevor actually make the motion?
Yes, I did.
Yes. Do 1 and 2. And not work on 3. Is there a seconder for Trevor's motion?
Where are we going with here?
So my motion is to receive the report as it's indicated, and further that the council authorize staff to attend future meetings with Goddard, North Huron, and the county representative to discuss the recommendation. My ad was to include Morris Turnberry. That's it, and then that was been my motion at all.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Are there any outstanding concerns about the erection of buildings adjacent to the airport? The possibility of Morris Turnberry allowing the building of structures that would impede the operation of the airport. Is that all settled?
No. The ask originally was for them to use zoning bylaw to protect the airspace inside their municipality, and they did not add that to their zoning bylaw at the time. So that is still, it's just inside the zoning bylaw as an awareness. It is not enforceable at this time. So if they were to build something that would impact our air surface, our air, yeah.
Councilor Knott.
Just to clarify that, Pat, that applies to surrounding areas, but within the flight zone of the existing runway, they have to abide by federal law still, don't they?
So the transition zone, which is right adjacent to the runway and the takeoff zone, no, they do not have to, because we are not a certified airport. We are a registered airport. And so there's no federal jurisdiction that protects our airspace that's guaranteed. We did put the zone in our part of the, so just for clarity, for those who don't remember, it's almost a 4-kilometer circle around the runway that impacts our airspace, with the most concentrated piece near the runway. But in our zoning bylaw, that did get added, but it is still not added in the Morris Turnberry. And anyone with the gumption could build something in direct flight of our takeoff off runway 33, which is the one, I think that's the one to the east, yeah. But I would hope that as good neighbors, we would not, and we would work with the building official and the planning department to prevent that from happening.
It's all up to Kirk to protect us.
It's all up to Kirk. But unlike radio towers and things like that do have to abide by airport airspace, this would strictly be buildings or silos and things like that that could be in the way.
Councilor Knott.
Is it possible for me to propose some slight amendment then to Trevor's motion? Obviously, we accept the first portion for sure. I think we should drop the reference to Morris Turnbull being invited because they'll be part of the county discussion anyway. It's their responsibility to invite them to future meetings. Anything and beyond that, then when we come to the third, as far as direction of staff, I think to pursue those 3 items: landing fees, the RC jet rally, and any opportunity for flying to investigate those. Would that be acceptable?
I do not have any concern with those, adding those.
Do I have a seconder then?
Wait a second.
Councillor Knott, seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Uh, 6.3.2, Wingham Ice In Policy Adjustment for the fall of 2018. You want to do that, Pat?
Yeah, I just want to pull it up. Just give me a second here. Right, so we've had a request to deviate from our ice-in policy at the Wingham Arena. It typically goes in the Tuesday after Labor Day. The request was to put it in a week early, which means starting the plant a week early, as is indicated in the report. So that request is the person who made that request is Corey Hayter. He is in the audience today if council wants to direct any questions to him. However, the request from staff to him when he put his request in is that then he had to secure additional ice users to equate 7,300 in revenue for the additional week that the plant would be running and offering ice. So he has tentatively done that, as appears in the chart, with 2 other potential renters being the Wingham Ironman and Saugeen Maitland Hockey. And so if we achieve the 55 hours, that meets the minimum number of dollars we need to offset the expense. So staff are confident making the recommendation that we do put the ice in early, but with the stipulations listed in the recommendation. And that would be that all committed ice users would have to make their bookings firm by June 1st, that they would have to pay for those by June 1st. Nothing can be canceled by those 3 users after June 1st. And once the ice is confirmed, then we would open up the rest of the ice for other rentals. But those 3 are the lead, and they would get first pick of the available ice. And then all ice prior to Labor Day is sold at prime time ice rates, and ice sold on Labor Day would be at the holiday rate, and with all those holiday rate conditions that we typically have. We don't anticipate any ice being sold on Labor Day, but something might change. So that's the recommendation, and staff are confident as long as the 3 ice users confirm and pay with no cancellation option, that we can meet the needs of the extra week of ice.
What could you read?
3 weeks of that, so they prepay.
Correct.
This is prepaid.
They would prepay non-refundable, because we've had that problem before where we've started the ice plant and then the user at the last minute has pulled their use. So we've learned from experience to make that a guarantee, yes, before we start the plant. So that's why we have the date of June 1st, so that all plans and provisions can be put in place for that early start, and we can start to advertise the ice by then.
Councillor Knott,
I'll make the motion. We support the as requested.
you're seconding Deputy Reeve. Any further discussion? Councillor Sykes.
I just have a question: that has these record provisions been, I'm assuming they've been discussed with Mr. Hayter. I'm assuming he's agreeable to the provisions.
As are the Ironmen for sure. We met with them as well. And we just have to, we've gone on Mr. Hayter's word that Saugeen Maitland is also, we assume that they will also take the same condition. But we will confirm all that after the motion is made. Right.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay. Moving to Public Works, 6.4.1, live treated water quality report. Sean?
As Regional Council are aware, any water system in the province of Ontario is extensively sampled under Ontario regulation. Out of the myriad of samples, chemical, physical, organic, inorganic, that are tested on an annual basis, 2 of them are sodium and fluoride. Sorry, to correct that, sodium is done every 5 years. These 2 parameters are of particular interest in that both parameters, if they exceed a particular threshold, initiate certain responses on the part of the municipality. In the Blythe water system, what we found in the January sampling of this year was that the sodium levels came in at, while we did a sampling and a resampling, they came in at 23.1 milligrams per liter or parts per million, and then a resample of 22.5. Now this is significant because the regulations call for 20 milligrams per liter to be a threshold that initiates a response. Basically, this is of interest to anybody that may have a sodium restricted diet. So the advice of the health unit is that when your drinking water is over that 20 milligram per liter threshold, that the municipality, the township notify the users. That gives them the ability to talk to their healthcare provider. And to put things in perspective, as far as sodium is concerned, the aesthetic objective for that for sodium is 200 milligrams per liter. So we're still very, very low, but it's at that point where, from a medical perspective, it's advisable to contact your healthcare professional. Now, as far as fluoride goes, there is a maximum allowable concentration of 1.5 milligrams per liter in the standards. Blythe's water sampled, the 2 samples that we did were 1.77 and 1.81 milligram per liter, which is over that threshold. That threshold's in places where it gets a little interesting if you're artificially adding fluoride. In a case where fluoride is naturally occurring, the threshold for notification becomes anything between 1.5 and 2.4. So we're within that notification threshold, whereby we contacted the county health department or county health unit. They have sent through the township are sending a notification out to the Blythe system users, and basically that's only there to say your fluoride levels are a little higher than normal. So take this into consideration when you're selecting your toothpaste, your mouthwash, and that sort of thing, particularly in younger users, because they can end up getting more fluoride than they really need. So again, there's a flyer that's gone out with the water bills, or will be going out. Just a brief summary from myself, a notification from the county health unit, as well as an instructional document that will kind of give people guidance. And the one thing that I was hoping to mention through you, Eve, is that if anybody has any questions, by all means, they can either call the health unit, or they can call us here at the township, and we can answer the questions.
Okay. Councillor Knott?
Through yourself to Sean, a question for you. When these samples here were taken, I got it every 5 years for the sodium, and I'm not sure whether I wasn't quite sure whether the fluoride's the same, but are these taken at the wellhead, or are they taken down the pipe?
These samples were all taken at point of entry. And what we did is, or what Veolia did, I'm sorry, is they looked at well 1 and 2 as well as well 5. All of the wells were up at that higher threshold. So it's consistent for the entire aquifer. You bring up a very interesting point though, a critical point. The requirement is every 5 years for notification, but because we know it's high, the practice from 2013 has been to annually sample it, to monitor just to see if there's any anomalies, and it remains very consistent at or around that threshold for both fluoride and fluoride.
So would that appear that this is not a result of the new well? This is something in the aquifer in the area that's.
It appears to be the entire area, right? Because when you look at the numbers from 1 and 2 and 5, they're very, very similar.
Right.
Councillor Vaughn, did you have?
No.
Okay.
Motion to receive?
Seconder? Councillor Knott, all in favor? Carried. 6.4.2, the landfill off-site CAZ investigation.
Thank you, Vincent. Again, since we're on the topic of Ministry of Environment, climate change monitoring and reporting, as everyone's aware, landfill operations have extensive requirements for monitoring associated with their operation. With regards to the Wingham landfill site, samples that were taken between 2012 and 2015 revealed that reasonable use guidelines for a number of parameters were being exceeded, and that these reasonable use guidelines are basically guidelines put in place by the ministry to say anybody should be able to drive a well in, and the water quality should be within certain thresholds, so it could be reasonably used. We noted that the sampling wells at the perimeter, around the perimeter of the landfill in one area were starting to show high for dissolved organic carbon, for arsenic, for iron, and for manganese. What they did in 2016 is they put an additional monitoring well on the other side of Reed Road in the direction that they knew to be the natural flow of groundwater. They found the numbers to be high there as well, which underscored the idea that we had groundwater impact leaving the site. So now what, at that point, what RG Burnside has recommended was that there was a map associated or included in the package that in order to establish a contamination attenuation zone or to determine the outer limits of this impact from the landfill site, they would like to put in 3 more monitoring wells on the adjacent property where they believe would be outside of the impact area. They made these proposals with authorization from the township. They forwarded this recommendation to the Ministry of Environment, who endorsed it. And basically where we are now, there's 4 recommendations that again have been endorsed by the ministry, and that's one, that we approach the adjacent property owner and request permission to put in 3 monitoring wells, basically drawing a line to determine that we're inside or that we know the extent of the CAZ. We would continue sampling to confirm that we're at the outer limits. Once we've confirmed that, we would have to get into negotiation with the property owner to secure water rights, because the whole idea is that we would purchase the water rights, thereby restricting their ability to use it. Then we don't have to worry about reasonable use guidelines. They don't have the right to use that particular area in terms of water. And then at that point, once everything else has been secured, we would contact the Ministry of Environment and get authorization to include this CAZ inside of our ECA, inside of our permit to operate. So basically, that's where we are right now. This is something that we will be talking about later this week in the budget. It's the cost to put the wells in has been incorporated into the budget, as well as the cost for ongoing monitoring. There's a couple of things to point out, though. Should we determine that, or should these 3 wells identify the outer limit of the CAZ, there will be ongoing annual monitoring. So this is not something that we just determine it, sample it, and walk away. This is now going to be part of the outer limit of our landfill site, should it be approved, and we would be required to monitor this on an ongoing basis. And the other side of it is, to make sure everything's been discussed. If we put these 3 wells in and still see influence, we would have to consider further drilling, further well. Now, that being said, they seem to be very comfortable that where we're looking at putting these wells would be the outer limit and would basically show the line of delineation for groundwater flow. So basically presented for information at this point because we still have some discussion of the budget process. Should note that the desire is that we would have approval and look at a spring drilling so that we could get that first initial set of samples into the 2017 sampling protocol.
Deputy Reeve.
Is there just one landowner involved here?
At this point, through you, there is just the one.
Councillor Vaughn.
Based on my extensive education in this sort of thing, from the Blythe landfill, I'm just wondering if there isn't some possibility of capturing those contaminants before they leave us. I mean, this could go on for years. We could end up owning the water rights for all of Huron County eventually, and I think that's not a very productive way of using our money. But is there anything that we could do to capture, to prevent some of those contaminants leaking out, or at least reducing their quantity?
At this point, I don't believe there's much that can be done to stop it. They have a sense that they know the extent that it's going to travel, and it moves extraordinarily slow. So this isn't a case of, flowing groundwater moving away from the landfill. It's a very, very slow moving process.
But expensive.
Terribly expensive.
Yeah.
And the other interesting thing, just there's references to a number of compounds, including arsenic. These compounds aren't coming from our landfill. It's the chemistry change that the leachate is imparting on the ground itself that are causing the release of naturally occurring elements. They did, or not caution us, they did assure us that the whole process moves extraordinarily slowly.
Councillor Knott.
Since we really ultimately then have no choice here, I'd like to make the motion that we accept the report. And,
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Vaughn. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, moving to 6.5.1, the 2017 annual fire report. Chad, do you want to
Yep, the
take that one?
fire report is what it is from 2017. That year was challenging, to say the least. We adapted and overcame. I hope everybody had a chance to read it. But what it is a breakdown of each division of what took place over 2017. Fire calls were 171 in total, which were down from 198 in 2016. And the way 2018 has started now, we're on target to probably. If there's any questions, I can answer them, or Matt can answer them.
Deputy Reeve.
It's not really a question, Chad. This is an excellent report. You've done a great job.
Thank you. It was brought to my attention that reporting hadn't been done for maybe 2017. So I felt detail was probably the best way to do it at this point.
Councillor Hallahan.
Very good report. I'll make the motion.
Councillor Vaughn, were you seconding?
Yes.
Further discussion, if any? All in favor? Oh,
Sorry.
Sorry.
The only question I had was when it relates to homes not in compliance with carbon monoxide stuff.
Yeah.
Is that something that comes back? Like, how often do we then go back, or is there an order issued or something to that effect that something?
So that was in Asheville Colburn, right? Walnosh?
It doesn't really say. It just says 26 homes that are not in compliance.
So at that time, the law was in effect, but we have nothing in place to enforce anything.
Okay.
That's something we should look at in 2018. To, like right now under the fire code, we can charge for not having carbon monoxide, there was still that grade when we were doing this, so it was best if we just. Does that make sense?
It does. I guess it begs another question, I think, wondering if that's something that the fire department or municipality would like to start to implement as.
And we already have since that, we're moving forward with that.
Oh, so we are, okay, so I misunderstood the fact that we are now
Yeah.
enforcing and charging if need be, if they don't have active.
Charging, no.
Fine, like, we're not fining.
No. That's something that now we have a new fire prevention officer that's just getting on board with everything that we have, and that would go through him.
It would go through him.
Good. So another 2 months or 3 months when we have all our ducks in a row, we can probably move forward.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All in favor? Carried. And 6.52, implementing Noxalone for opioid emergencies. Do you want to comment on that, Chad?
I can. So this has also been a year in the making, and we did it backwards because the province wasn't providing it to naloxone to outside agencies. If you were a member of the public, you could go to the pharmacy and get naloxone if you were suspicious of somebody using it for free. For some reason, fire departments and EMS couldn't get their hands on it for free. So we went through the training, and Matt and I, and at that time Brian Ladder, were trying to figure out how we could get money to purchase this. And then on January 28th, the province came in with this program of now it's free. So I was working backwards. That's why I'm here now to get permission from council to move forward. The Huron County Health Unit is just waiting. The outcome tonight, and we will have this stuff in place. We've done the training, we have the guidelines in place. Everybody's educated. It's just a matter of getting them.
Councillor Sutton.
So, the police services board has implemented this for the police service at this point, so, I would, I'll move that motion at this point for the rest of the fire service.
Deputy Reed Campbell seconds. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. Moving to 6.71, fire chief recruitment process. Dwayne?
Thanks, Reed. So there's two parts to this report. The first part has to do with the job description for the fire chief. The second part has to do with the process under which we'll undertake to recruit the fire chief. So in terms of the job description itself, just a couple of highlights. The position, the job description has the references in the job description, most of the references. There's one reference left, which basically indicates assist. But other than that, the Emergency Service Training Center references have been removed from the position. A provision has been added that does require the position to be on call on a rotational basis. And as well, it's been revised to indicate that the individual needs to be resident of the community for the purposes of responding to emergency calls. So this revised job description has been working with Matt and Chad on it, and believe that will meet our needs. In terms of the process, we've been working, again, Matt, Chad, and myself have been working with the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs. And I won't go into any great detail. I think it's there in the report for you. However, there is, with respect to the interview panel, I'm not sure, Reeve, whether you'd like to speak to that or not. In terms of the interview panel as it's proposed would consist of the Reeve, a representative of the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs, and myself.
But I personally would like one other member of council to be part of that. So it just isn't he said, she said, or whatever. and that that would still only take it to 4 people, so that isn't that onerous. But if council is in support of that, I would be ready to take nominations for that. Somebody to be that one extra person to be part of that committee. Councilor Knott?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with that, there should be one more from council, so that's it. But at the same time, I stated before that I would like to see, if possible, can we work this so that we take the top 3 candidates and have an opportunity for the entire council to not necessarily go through a full-blown interview or anything, but have an opportunity to meet with them briefly and have an internal discussion with the rest of that committee before final designation of the number 1 candidate. And I think that's critical, that we get that input from all of council this time around. So, but it can be just the final 2 or 3. But I think that should be incorporated in there, as well as 1 more additional committee member from council.
What is consensus of council on that? Councilor Ritzman Dominguez?
I'll support Bill on that.
Councilor Vaughn?
My only concern is whether that's going to extend the time frame. I mean, I think it's very important that the decision be done very properly and with eyes wide open. At the same time, I'm just wondering about the mechanics of having that other meeting of a number of candidates.
If we were to put that in it, council would have to make themselves available on relatively short notice. Councilor Syed?
And I would hope that if the entire council could not be in attendance, that the process would continue. Like, we're not all gonna be available all the time, so as long as the process continues and we're available, I think that I'm in support of that. And it sounds to me like, based on this report, that the deputy chiefs are in favor of the process and the fire department is in favor of the process. So I'm excited the fact that the communication is getting there, and let's continue the process and see where we go.
Okay. Do we have a nomination for the 1 extra?
You need to make a motion first to alter that to
I was going to do it all as one.
1.
If we had 1 other from council, Councilor Hallahan?
He's nominated on that. Erie Campbell.
Yes. Is there further nominations? Is there further nominations?
I'd like to nominate Yolanda or Councilor Ritzman Dominguez.
Okay. Third and final time for nominations. Okay. In reverse order, are you willing to stand?
Yes.
Okay. Do we have ballots? Are you willing to stand?
Yes, I am.
You want to have a pen?
Okay. Everyone's going to post it.
better than this.
Okay,
Oh,
you
right.
vote for one person that you want elected to this.
Oh.
I have to grab one of my own.
Just one right here beside you.
One of these?
Yeah, just post a note.
I'm just looking for a big box.
Richard and Dwayne will do the count.
Um, 5 for Deputy Reeve Campbell and 2 for Councillor Ritzman.
Okay, Denise, you're on. Okay, for. You have the motion? All in one motion?
So the first part is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby approves the attached job profile for the Director of Fire and Emergency Services position, and further that the Council of the Township of Huron hereby approves the recruitment process outlined in the CIO's report for 2018, and further that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby appoints Reeve Vincent and Deputy Reeve Campbell as members of the interview panel, and further that Council have the opportunity to interview the top 3 candidates.
Okay, that's agreeable.
I'll make the motion.
Did you have
As a minute.
the names on it? All in favor? Okay, moving to 6.72, police servicing analysis. Dwayne?
Thanks, Reeve. So in your council packages, you would have received a report from myself, and the report summarizes the process that we have undertaken thus far. It includes notes from the public information session, 2 sessions that were held on January 19th. It includes a petition that we received, as well as written comments we received from the public. And in addition to that, some information that we've gathered from other municipalities. And I'll maybe just comment, in addition to the comments that are in the report, 2 additional comments were received after the report was prepared. One is from Nancy Lazenby, site coordinator with the Center for Employment Learning. And her letter is in support of maintaining the Wing Police Services. And I'll provide a copy of these to council, but dealing with safety and in particular presence of community psychiatric services that are located in the ground floor in their building, and the ability for the service to respond in a timely manner. And the second actually was addressed to Councillor Sype, but he subsequently shared it, I understand. Again, in support of maintaining the Wingham service from, Larry Searson and Dr. Marie Gear, and speaking to controlling the costs in the long run and their coverage will not be satisfactory, and the fact that the OPP would be located in Clinton is a showstopper. So those are a couple additional comments that we have received. In addition, I I think of particular note, and it's included in your report, we did receive comments from the Wing and Police Association, and we received comments from Chief Tim Poole. And those were provided in your council packages for your review. I'm not sure in terms of how much detail the letters are there to be addressed. The association does express some concern with respect to office. They indicate that council should be aware that this is not, this is about officer safety and public safety, that there's two components to it. They indicate that the association currently negotiations with the North Huron Police Services Board, and although they cannot completely divulge our requests, we're standing firm on having 2 officers on duty at all times, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The association expresses support of appreciation for the townspeople. However, wanted to comment that there has to be an understanding that this is becoming increasingly difficult to maintain a bare minimum police service. And they conclude by saying, we want to continue to exist as a police service, but given the presentations and no possibility of expansion and the potential increased cost to manpower, it only makes sense that the township accept the OPP proposal and initiate the process of disbanding the Wing Police Service. Chief Poole speaks highly of the Wing Police Service and discusses a number of accomplishments. As a local ratepayer, he expresses that he very much wants to keep the local police service, however, highlights 6 areas of concern. The areas of concern with regard to the number of staff on duty, the increased seriousness of incidents, the limited staff to compensate for sickness or injury in officers, ensuring the officers have a supervisor to contact at all times, cost to repair vehicles and vehicles being out of service, and potential that the OPP will charge for services currently being provided at no cost to the municipality. So just in terms of, you'll see in my recommendation there, the comments in particular from the Wing and Police Association and from Chief Poole, that's new information, that we did receive comments at the public information session, and we have received written comments as well. Some of people who attended the information session also provided written comments, which is great. There were no comments at that time from the association or from Chief Poole at the time of the public information session. So in light of the fact that as a municipality, we've received at least 2 delegations. We've heard from the OPP twice. We haven't had any delegations from either the association or the police or the police chief. And given the decision that is before council, it is a very, very significant or important decision for council to make. And I think, in fairness, having the discussion within the context of one of our existing council meetings, in my opinion, would not do it justice and fairness. So what I'm suggesting is that we have a special council meeting and we invite the association and the chief to come and to speak to council and to speak to the comments and hear what they have to say to ensure that we have all the information in front of us. And we may, and further to that, I know that there will be a lot of public interest in this. So my suggestion is to schedule it for later in February to allow us to advertise, put it in the newspaper, website, etc. Make sure that we have adequate notice of the meeting and to hold it in the, my suggestion is, given the public interest in it, that we don't have sufficient space here in the council chambers. So similar to as we've done in the past, have it upstairs in the town hall theater, so we can accommodate as many people from the public that are interested in attending. So that's summary of the report and my comments and recommendations, and I'll throw it over to the Reeve as far as where you want to go from here.
Okay, but as printed in what went out, it was suggested February 21st. That is the night of the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority annual meeting. So that what we talked about this morning was possibly taking that Monday, February 26th as a date. Anything from council on being a possibility?
26 is better for me, I'm away on the 25th.
Okay. And I believe giving the town police detachment and the chief the opportunity is in the interests of full transparency in looking at the issues so that we've given OPP the stage. This is giving the current Wingham Town Police Force the ability to put their foot forward in making the presentation to us. Councillor Biden?
One of the options that has had very little attention, in fact, almost no attention, is the one of expanding the service of the Wingham Police Department across the entire municipality. I can't think of any reason why we should consider that, but it's something that has never been discussed, and we haven't set up any arrangement to bring that up as an issue. I wouldn't be upset if we don't do that, but I'm just pointing that out as a kind of a missing link in our discussion.
I'm not exactly sure when it was, but it's approximately 3 to 4 years ago. That was discussed extensively by the previous council. And I think something else that maybe some of the neighboring municipalities might be interested in something. I don't think that I am at liberty to mention which municipalities, but I know that there was possible 4 municipalities would like to be able to have an option to look at something other than OPP. So that I don't think that this has to be decided by, I'll say, especially for the Wingham Ward, what the policing for Wingham Ward is, but there may be something in the future that might gain a little bit of traction. You don't know. I feel that this has to be decided for the Wingham Ward at this time. And with the OPP building a Huron Command Center in Clinton, I think there may be something in the future for some of our neighboring municipalities. Might want to have some discussions. Those are just talk at this time. Councillor Singh.
But to go with Councillor Biden's question, I don't think in any of the analysis that we have, or at least that I remember seeing, would show us what the impact to the other wards would be if it was expanded to those wards. So obviously understanding the fact that the Wingham Police is area rated to Wingham, if you expand it to the entire municipality, the area rating would go away. Yes. Or some type would go away, and then therefore the discussion happens about what tax rates and how all that stuff goes. That analysis, I don't think, has been presented as part of any analysis, because really we're not really sure on what that conversation is, even if there was an appetite to have that conversation. That's the part that I'm not sure of, and that's the part that I'm struggling with when I talk about the alternatives, because I'm wondering if that isn't even an alternative that we want, that the ratepayer want to discuss. That's the concern that I have.
In that previous analysis, it was looking at similar service to the other two wards as what the OPP were providing. Ballpark figure, it was about 100,000 a year more than what the current OPP contracts were at that time. At that time, there was a strong representation from both East Wanash Ward and Blythe Ward that they did not want the policing price to double, which would happen in dropping area rating. What I'm hearing is Wingham Ward people want the service that they have been getting. And it would have to stay as an enhanced service, such as the costs for the first 3 years for Wingham Ward to maintain that visible police presence that they have had. And there was a lot of work put into that by, I'll say, the Wingham Police Service and the chief in coming up with those figures at that time. And I believe those figures can be extrapolated to inflation factors, and they would still be very relevant. Go ahead.
But here's my question to you, Reeve, is that those were decisions made by a previous council.
Yes, they were.
I, as a councillor, have not seen that documentation. I don't know whether it's right, wrong, or indifferent. Alls I know is what, if it's the belief of council that that alternative is not willing to be discussed, then we should stop discussing it. If it's still on the table, then we should have the information as part of the alternatives to make the realistic decision on whether it's part of the alternatives or not. Right now, what I'm saying is that information isn't been a part of the analysis or the analytics comparing the OPP to what we have today. All it's been is comparing what we have today to the OPP. The other alternatives haven't been shown as analytical compared to what the service is today. So, you know, that's the part that I'm struggling with. It's not that the alternatives aren't right or the costing is wrong, but what my issue is that we're talking about decisions that were made by previous councils that I wasn't a part of. And I'm elected as the current council to make that decision based on information that's been updated. And I don't know if it's been updated.
Councillor Knott.
Page 8, bottom of the page, financial impact. You'll see that it hasn't been addressed. And Dwayne has included some cost over on what it would be if we included Blythe. I remember distinctly the analysis given prior, which was more than 4 years ago now. I believe it was actually done almost 7 years ago when it was put together and presented about 6 years ago. It was actually initially presented before I was on council. And yes, Blythe and East Wawanash said they didn't want to because there was a substantial increase at that time, but the cost of the OPP policing has risen to the point where the cost differential is much less today than it was 6 or 7 years ago. But as far as I'm concerned, this issue right now before us is a Wingham issue. Do we or do we not? And I want to pull myself out of it. Still maintain, I'm not the one, I'm not a Wingham resident. I'm not the one paying the tax. It's the Wingham residents who have to make this decision. I wish we'd have a plebiscite or a separate election and tag it on next year's election and say, do you want to keep your own police force? Yes or no, let them vote on it. As per usual, we're getting a lot of response from people, and you usually get one side or the other is the one that predominantly responds, but there is always that silent majority, or in this case maybe the silent minority, but we really don't know. I'm getting the sense that when people want to keep their police force, that's what they want, that's what they get. They're paying for it, not Blythe or East Wawash. So if Wingham wants to pay that extra money, so be it. After that's decided and we've made a decision to support the Wingham Police Force, that's when we can go back and see if there is a financial reason for expanding the police force. I've always said that there probably is, whether it's to neighboring municipalities or to Blythe or East Wawash. I mean, if Morris Turnberry wants to pay us to police them, it doesn't matter what Blythe or East Wawash want, if there's an opportunity for us to subsidize the cost. But bear in mind that if it's still the Wingham Police Force, any subsidy that we realize from policing other will go to Wingham and not to East Wawash or Blythe. So there are a great many considerations, but first and foremost, we have to make the decision what's going to happen with Wingham.
Councillor Vaughan.
We have to vote. This is a decision to be made by council. And if we abstain, we're actually voting in the negative.
Correct.
So we are obliged, I think, to make a decision on which way we're voting.
Councillor Howell.
What I'm getting at is just, I can see if Wingham people want the Wingham police. Fine, that's okay. Blythe and East Wawash want OPP. We don't have to go any farther. We don't have to do pricing. They're happy with what they're getting. Wingham's happy with what they're getting with their Wingham OPP. I'm happy. They're paying the bill, so they should get what they want. Whether it be Wingham or Blythe and East Wawash.
Okay. Yes.
So the,
Do you want a motion to accept the report from the CAO, and that we have a special meeting on February 26th? Do we have a time? Do we want it 6 o'clock? It's an open public meeting. Do we want to do it a little earlier?
How's council? Would 7 be better? I think there's a number of, I'll say, ratepayers in Wingham would appreciate it being 7 rather than 6.
Go with 7.
Okay. Okay.
And don't forget to change the acceptances. And there's a delegation for the 26th. Change that up. We don't want them here on the 21st.
Yeah. We've already changed it on our copies, Bill. Okay. Moving that?
I'll move that.
That's not the thing. Second here. Go ahead.
I just want to comment that I won't make it now, but at that meeting, I will be asking for an exemption for the procedural bylaw to allow the public to ask questions. I'm just making that a comment today because I know it will be a council meeting, so that's not normally in our procedural bylaw, but I will be making that exception at that meeting. Just letting advise.
It was understood similar to letting the OPP answer questions that we were looking at, that questions from the public, and would be quite welcome in that as part of the protocol for that meeting.
As long as it's different than
same as what we did for the OPP.
Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay.
Where is that meeting taking place?
In the theater above us. Okay. From correspondence, the 7.1, notice of an application for consent for severance, municipality of Morris Turnberry. and that the council of the township of North Huron have reviewed and have no objections to the application for consent for severance file number B0118 as submitted on January 22nd. You're moving, Councillor Hallahan? Okay. Is there any discussion on this one? All in favor? Carried. And the second motion, that the council of the township of North Huron have reviewed and have no objections to the application for consent for severance file B0218 as submitted on January 22nd. It's a second consent. Councillor Ritzman Dominga, Councillor Hallahan. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. 7.2, public meeting concerning proposed zoning bylaw amendment affecting the municipality of Morris Turnberry. That the council of the township of North Huron have reviewed and have no objections to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment received February 2nd, 2018 to rezoning South Park Lot 1, Concession 1, Morris. It's 86348 London Road as submitted by the municipality of Morris Turnberry. Deputy Reeve Campbell moves. Councillor Ritzman, any discussion on this one? All in favor? Carried. Okay, 7.3 is Maitland Valley Conservation Authority appointment to the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority Board of Directors. That Deputy Reeve Campbell has been doing it. You're moving that he would continue?
Yes, sir.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. And on the source water protection, that David Blaney has been representing sort of the northeast part of the county on that. And he would be quite willing to continue. He would be representing North Huron, Morris Turnberry, and Huron East.
I move that we choose David Blaney.
Okay, and Deputy Reeve Campbell seconds that. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Okay. .4. I hope everybody has read that because it is sort of a long thing. But basically, it's the Ontario Good Roads Association requesting support for reforms to the municipal class environmental assessment process. I believe that it would be a good thing for us to support. Do I have Councillor Knott is moving support?
Yes.
Deputy Reeve Campbell. Any discussion on it? All in favor? Carried. 7.5. Maitland Valley Conservation Authority 2018 priorities, work plan, and budget. Richie.
So the recommendation for this one is that the council of the township of North Huron hereby approves the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority draft budget and municipal levy for 2018, and further that the Director of Finance is directed to include the Maitland Valley Conservation Authority's 2018 municipal levy for the Township of North Huron in the 2018 budget.
Do I have a mover? Councillor Syke, Councillor Knott. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. 7.6, Bruce Power. It's a request for a letter to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. Richard?
So for this one, the recommendation is that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby directs the CIO to prepare a letter to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission in support of Bruce Power's 10-year operating license renewal, including any necessary attachments of publications or work done with Bruce Power.
Councillor Knott moving. Councillor Syke seconding. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. Seven point seven, Huron County Federation of Agriculture. We have an invitation for two representatives to the MPP, MP, and local politician meeting. I believe that's the 23rd of February. Councillor Knott?
I would move that we send Councillor Hallahan and Councillor Campbell for Deputy Reeve Campbell. Send to.
All second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Carried. And 7.8, the Lions Club of Wingham. And it's a letter regarding insurance coverage for the Santa Claus Parade. And that one thing that's what was printed. And I think it would be a good idea to refer to staff for a report outlining options on that. Councillor Knott?
I'd make that motion. I'd like to, and I'd like to perhaps propose that we investigate that the Santa Claus Parade become part of North Huron, but that we appoint the Lions Club of Wingham as the organizers, and would that allow us to then include them in our insurance coverage?
Pat, do you want to fill in?
Sure, I can fill in a few blanks here. In fact, I spoke to PFL, our insurance provider, today, and with respect to this item, I'm just trying to open up the email. Separate legal entities, including but not limited to large service organizations such as the Lions Club, should always be required to have a separate insurance. So they're recommending that no, we do not make them encompassed in ours and make it our event and ask them to organize it. That the insurance was $300 for them to purchase for their parade. So they're asking us to cover that expense, but that we not change it to how the event is insured. If it is truly the Lions Club who are organizing it, which in this case it is.
Go ahead, Councillor Knott.
Can I ask through Pat then, what are they referring to then $871? This must include additional costs over and above just their insurance.
Oh, yes.
I'm assuming.
That I'm not familiar with. We have to bring back a report as
Yeah.
we recommended here to bring all of the information. I know the police are involved, public works are involved, there's insurance, there's a number of entities, I believe, that cost their club that much to hold the event. I'm sure there's other expenses,
Yeah, so it's
advertising
more
it,
than
and,
just the insurance.
yeah,
This is true for our candy system.
the 871 is Lions cost.
Yeah,
That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just confusing because they're asking us to pay the insurance and then telling us their cost is $871, but you're saying it's only $300. So that's substantial.
Councillor Syke.
Based on the conversation, let's have the report brought back with the options and what's all involved with regards to, maybe the Lions Club can be part of that discussion, but what it all comes about putting it on. So we all understand what the issues are and how we can somehow mitigate them. I'll move that.
Yeah,
Councillor
I think this is
Hallahan?
true, and I think this is why there's no Santa Claus parade in Clyde anymore, is because of the same sort of thing, they just quit it.
All second.
Councillor Knott seconds. The one thing I'll say in the report and in researching for the parade for East Wawanah celebrations, there is some other ways of mitigating that. Because the extra money was to have live animals in the parade. And there, if you're a member of I think it's called the Equestrian Association. You can have ponies or saddle horses or what, but they have, through that organization, a blanket $5 million coverage for them being in a public thing, so that the ones that have that, that's one of the things that can be part of this report that comes back. Okay. Move this along. If no further discussion, all in favor of the motion. Carried. And 7.9, Big Brothers, Big Sisters of North Huron, request for donation for Bowl for Kids' Sake lane sponsorship. Deputy Reeve Campbell.
I think this is an opportunity for us as a council to take $10, take $20 out of our pocket, throw it on the table and give them a donation rather than throw it through anything within the municipality. That's my suggestion. I don't know what the rest of you think.
I'll second it. $100.
I think I don't think we need to run this through the township. I think this is something we can do ourselves.
Council can do it themselves. I'll second it.
Okay.
Here, you want to match $20?
There you go.
Better than putting money in front of
Damn.
Any further discussion?
Check the sheet.
Make sure you give me back a real.
All in favor of the motion? Carried. Okay, moving to 8.1, Reeves report. Basically, in MPP Lisa Thompson's report, Remarkable Citizens, it was heartwarming that 9 of them had strong connections or attachments to North Huron. And we congratulate Lisa Thompson on her appointment as caucus chair. And I also attended a public meeting to discuss Westario having a rate increase in their hydro billing model, which is being overseen by the Ontario Energy Board, so that it's definitely, they have to jump through hoops with the Energy Board to have anything like that done. Also, on the Roma conference back in January, the opening speech by Amanda Lang was one of the most inspirational speeches I've heard in a long time. It was, look at how a 2-year-old learns and how much they laugh. Why do we try to reduce both learning and laughing? And she went on to describe many of the cases in point at length on how we stifle creativity in kids with our education system. Too many teachers believe that there is only one way to do things rather than letting a creative mind come at it from different directions. I felt it very inspiring. Also, meeting with the Minister, the Attorney General, Yasser Naqvi, was pleasant. And he had a representative from the Ministry of Community Safety and Correctional Services. And this was basically my critique of Bill 175 on all the things that are coming in with things that basically a small town police service board could not even look at. Basically, they would have to have an advisory board of at least 7 people. The first person that they say should be on this would be a representative of the Lynn board for your region. There was, in the next 4, 3 of them were county, things that the county does for us in social and community services, and we would have to have representatives. It was just outlandish. And the 153 pages, admittedly, the first time I went over it, I did speed reading, where I usually look at and, the, as the words that I consciously look at when I'm speed reading. What I began seeing is that municipal council shall, the municipal council shall. It was very disheartening. And one of the things that was part of it, if you have a waterway, you will have to police it, providing proper training to your force and equipment to police a waterway. With the Maitland River and the dam, that could be extensive costs. And admittedly, it will be going to 3rd reading soon, but we did get our objections in on it. We also met with Ernie Hardeman and a number of other ones in the Conservative caucus on the same points, and that it just was unreasonable for a small rural community to look at the requirements that were being asked for. And basically, pretty well everybody we talked to, there was understanding that it would not work. So that's
Just
all.
a question on that Bill 175. Would our fire department also have to be required to have water safety? I don't know if you guys have water safety. Or do
Short.
That this is on policing and police service boards and stuff that is tied in. Other divisions such as firefighters, EMS would be associated, but I don't think that they're tied in the bill, this bill, the way I read it. Councilor Wadden.
I'd just like to thank you, Reeve, for such a great report. That was very, very well presented, thorough, and convincing. I think it represented us extremely well.
Thank you. Okay. I think in the interest of time, I will shut up for a minute or two. Council member reports. Councilor Sykes.
So there is a request that obviously has been presented in correspondence from your letter with regards to Bill 175 that I was going to get for the Police Services Board to review as well. So just so that they're up to date on what potential impact that might have to the service if it goes as read today. Obviously, I think in the fairness of that particular bill, I think the comments of that bill needs to be at least advised as a part of this discussion that we're also having with regards to policing so I think I'll take that information that you presented in your letter to the minister, and I thank you for that. So my request for the CAO to provide any information has been already noted, and I've got that information that I'll take. So nothing more it needs to be for you. You're welcome.
Thank you. And 8.3.1, Councillor Ritzman Tatinga has made a request to attend a second convention this year. That there is one convention policy, and to give some background to this, county council has a dollar limit for training and conferences, and that per diems would be taken over to the pay to a counselor side of the equation. For Huron County Council, that is set at $3,700 per counselor for conventions or training. In relation to what we have used, rather than say one convention, I would rather see it taken to a dollar amount, such as the county, and basically in that rationale, past history is that it's towards $2,500 a counselor, so $2,000 for registration and accommodation, etc., and that the per diem would come from the other line of the budget. Would be how the council would do that. I'm just throwing that out. That the way it has been is, if council wanted, they could approve a second convention to a member by a motion. Approve that. It's something for you to think about, and do you want to make comments?
My request is simply to attend AMO this summer.
Attend what?
AMO.
Councillor
I
Watt?
move approval of that.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. Deputy Reeve?
I think we should put a cap on the spending of this, which might not cover all of your expenses to go. That would be, just so it keeps in comparison with what the county does. I don't know if you want to make that as part of the motion, because this is another expense that we have to cover that we normally wouldn't cover, because this is in our bylaws that we only attend one council or one conference. So this will add, this will put another, I have no idea how much.
Councillor Slate?
My question is not the fact that one individual is going. So if somebody hadn't gone to a conference, we would be paying for that. So for example, if I hadn't gone to a conference this year and I wanted to go to AMO, you would be paying for it, right? The conversation is if nobody else wants to go, and we've got a counselor who wants to go that's already went to it, that we get the motion entitled. The discussion about capping and changing the policy or changing the rule, let's have that discussion to change the discussion when we're having the budget on Thursday, and then have a motion or movement come through procedural bylaw change or something within that. Otherwise, I think we would have been paying for one otherwise, somebody, so the fact that it's the same counselor, I think is irrelevant. I think it's just the fact that it is in our bylaws that we needed an approval for that because it is a second one, and let's just leave it at that at this point.
But you don't get paid to go to that conference, and that's not as part of your per diem or anything. Like going to the conference, that is part of your pay for the year as a counselor. If you don't go, that's your loss. That has nothing to do with how much we pay out as far as people going. That's part of our per diem. When we pay to go on a conference, that is covered. If you don't go, that money is not still in the budget, I think. I don't know. Is that right, Tom?
I'm not sure what you're saying.
But the registration paid
If
for
we
it.
don't go, that money still remains there. That money doesn't go to send somebody else now.
So like you have a budget for training that we set up, and in fact, last year it wasn't enough. We actually council spent more than the budget, which we can talk about on Thursday in 2017. So we allocate it by like total dollars rather than by each what is being suggested is like X dollars per counselor to go, and how many you can get out of that, then that's kind of what Neil's suggesting there.
But I think it is as the per diem, like
Well, no,
regardless, I'm just saying the
thinking of our
registration's gonna be paid for to go to AMO. Regardless of who goes, the registration to attend AMO is paid for.
But if you don't go, that's not paid for.
It
Like,
is
you're
paid
paying-
for,
you're-
and
but
it's
you don't
not.
go, but you don't
If you
use,
don't
it doesn't go to somebody else to go. That is money is set aside for you. But let's leave it to budget discussion.
We get a second.
Yes.
Brock?
I think it's wrong to look at conferences as a holiday or a trip. It's not what it is. It's an educational process. I think we need to have people go to AMO. It's a very informative learning situation that we need. I'm more likely to complain about all counselors going to one conference. I think that's overdoing it. But I think to say that we're not going to support when only one counselor is a small number, I think that's wrong. I think that's misinterpreting the purpose of the conference.
Okay. We have a motion on the floor. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor? Carried. Okay, go ahead,
I
Brock.
had a brief report that I wanted to make in the previous step.
Go ahead.
I just want to make mention of the Destination Blythe workshops that took place in November and December. The report is out. It's an extensive report, but it's quite a magical kind of thing. And we had people from all areas, from Toronto, London, as well as this area, Stratford, talking about Blythe and improving the community as a destination for economic development and for cultural development and so on. We had such a diverse group of people from different areas, different backgrounds, different attitudes, different values, and great ideas. I think the common element was great support for our community. And this report, it has brought all of those ideas together and knitted them together and expanded because of the interconnections that we saw between these diverse ideas. And I think it's a very exciting thing. And over the next year or two or more, I think there are going to be many opportunities will come to light because of this. And it's not a council project, but I think it's important that council be supportive of the ideas that come out of this. And so if anybody is not on the mailing list to get this, I will gladly send you a copy of my report. It's not my report, but the report that I received in the mail. I think it's worth a read.
Okay, moving to 9.1, and Ontario Small Urban Municipalities, OSM. And this is what I would like to see brought before our next meeting, hopefully supported by at least 2 councillors to move and second it. But that the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby supports the nomination of CAO of the Township of North Huron, Dwayne Evans, as an administrative member of the OSM Executive Committee for a 2-year period effective May 2nd, 2018. If elected or acclaimed, commits to sending a minimum of 2 council representatives to attend the OSM conference annually. And further, that if elected or acclaimed, associated expenses to attend OSM Executive Committee meetings approximately 3 times per year, and an OSM annual conference be reimbursed to the CAO. So that is something to think about, and we will look at that being on next meeting's agenda. Moving to bylaws. Bylaw number 5, 2018, being a bylaw to appoint persons, including council members, to various boards, committees, and associations.
So the motion for this is that bylaw number 5, 2018, being a bylaw to appoint persons, including council members, to various boards, committees, and associations, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and placed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Knott, Deputy Reeve Campbell, all in favor? Carried. And bylaw number 6, 2018, being a bylaw to appoint a drainage superintendent pursuant to the Drainage Act, RSO 1990.
For this one, that the bylaw number 6, 2018, being a bylaw to appoint a drainage superintendent pursuant to the Drainage Act, RSO 1990, CD 17, S93, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and be engrossed in bylaw book.
Councillor Syke, Councillor Lawton, all in favor? Carried. Bylaw number 7, 2018, being a bylaw to provide interim tax levies.
That bylaw number 7, 2018, being a bylaw to provide for interim tax levies, be introduced, read a first, second, third, and final time, signed by the Reeve clerk, and be engrossed in the bylaw book.
Councillor Syke and Councillor Knott, all in favor? Carried. Any announcements? Other business? Okay. Moving to point 13, closed session. That the Council of the Township of North Huron hereby proceeds at 9:38. An in-camera session to discuss the following 3 points. All in favor? Carried. We will have a short recess.